blind man, your beauty is not escape, man. You got all these roads, traveling on. Oh, they come the song, they come the song.
Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us. That's right, this is the No Soundbites Allowed podcast, and I am on the Exceptional Conservative Network, the TECN TV, and I am happy to be here with everyone. I hope you're having a great day. We're going to have a very good episode. This is on the eve of the Memorial Day weekend. I hope everyone's got great plans for the weekend. I hope we're going to take a time to really celebrate Memorial Day and what it means and what it's about. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, although there is a lot of sad news that is also going to be involved in this episode today. But I want to start off, first of all, there was an announcement that just came out, and it's somewhat breaking news here. And no, I don't have my sound effects up, so I'm a little upset. But I did want to address this because many people may have heard about this. I think it's very important that we address this. There was breaking news. Now, for people who are not familiar, in the region of upstate New York that I live in the Broome County region, the southern tier of New York, yesterday, May 22nd, in one of the local high schools, the Union Endicott High School, there was a incident. There was a lockdown of the school. Obviously, a lot of parents were very concerned about this. This was happening at the same time that in the region, another high school was having a safety drill. So it's odd timing with that. But in the Union Endicott school, the school was locked down because of an incident with a gun that was expected or was considered. And they had to shut down the school and investigate. And the news reported that there was, in fact, a 911 call of a suspect having a gun on the grounds of the school, a gun-free zone. And as it turned out, there has been an arrest of, and I'm reporting this from the announcement on Twitter by Vince Briga, one of the local reporters for Spectrum News, and he mentions that an arrest has been made of an 18-year-old Derek Abney, that's Derek Abney, of Binghamton, New York, who was in possession of a firearm at the school, apparently. And so that is the breaking news. Now, the thing that we should take away from that, and the thing that's really important about that, is that what this has gone on, and you can see my Twitter comment over at MV Consult on Twitter. What essentially that means is that there was a complete failure of gun-free zones. There was a complete failure of the New York SAFE Act. There was a complete failure of the red flag legislation that was enacted this year. In other words, all of these things that have been promised, absolutely promised, you have been guaranteed that if you exchange your freedom for your right to the Second Amendment, your freedom of choice, your rights and freedoms were put on a bargaining table. And you were told that if you passed the gun-free zones, if you passed the New York SAFE Act, if you passed the red flag legislation, that you will be safe. that your safety and the safety of your children, and especially in schools and mass shootings and school shootings, they would decrease and you would have greater safety. That was the promise that was made by Governor Cuomo, by many in the Democratic Party, the New York State legislature under the single party rule of Democrats. You were promised these things. And this is something that has been promised in states across the nation. It's been said in Illinois. It's been said in California. It has been said in Connecticut. We've been told that this will prevent these kinds of mass shootings, these incidents where we can see a gun in and around our children. That's the promise. That was what we were told. And all you have to do is give up some of your rights and you would have that safety. In exchange, and what we have seen, not just in exchange, but in reality, is that individuals with a criminal intent do not follow the law. That is a fact. That is a fact we see here in Union Endicott High School. That is a fact that we see in the southern tier of New York. That is a fact we have seen across the nation and the world. Telling people, creating a law that affects only law-abiding citizens, that only impacts law-abiding citizens, who are 99.999% of the time not a problem, does not make you safer. It just makes you less free. That is a fact. And that fact has been proven yet again with this 18-year-old going to the Union Endicott High School with a firearm. But for whatever reason, and we don't have the reason yet, Vince Briga will be probably reporting that shortly. But what is the motive? I don't know. And it doesn't really matter. A criminal intent to violate a gun-free zone, a criminal intent with violating the New York SAFE Act, violating red flag legislation, violating dozens of gun control and gun laws has been committed. Period. You are not safer. You are less free. You are not safer. That's what we need to take away from that. And when we hear people say, well, all you need is, what do they call it, common sense gun legislation, realize that there is no common sense in this. Common sense says that you punish and try to prevent criminals from doing criminal acts, from the deranged being able to commit acts of vile evil. That is what common sense would say that you need to do. Common sense doesn't say punish the people who aren't a problem to start with. That's what it is. And if we were smarter in New York State, we would probably have adopted some of the regulations that Florida has adopted after the Parkland shooting, where they enabled armed resource officers into the schools and allow teachers to be armed so that they can better protect the students rather than have them duck and cover and pray that they are able to reach to attack that shooter and be able to stop that shooter before they are able to kill more people. So that in that first minute, in the most dangerous time of any school shooting or any event with school shootings, is the first minute to 3 minutes. That is when the highest number of people are injured and harmed and killed because of the lack of response and the amount of confusion and chaos. And what helps in that situation, and helps actually in every incident of mass shootings, is the presence of another individual, a good person, who has a firearm that is able to return fire and to stop that individual from targeting innocents who are defenseless and unable to protect themselves. There is no law that protects you from a bullet, period. There is no law that protects you when someone of criminal and evil intent, deranged individuals, decide that the only answer that is available to them is to go forward and to harm innocent people. There is the root of the problem. We have not addressed that. We continue to not address that as a nation, and that is why we continue to see these incidents. That is why we have a problem, because we are not addressing what makes an 18-year-old say, I need to take a firearm to school to potentially or actually harm other innocent students, children, individuals. What makes them say that that is the only answer left in their lives? If we cannot answer that, we cannot resolve this, and there is no law that you can pass that will be able to protect people if you cannot answer that question, and we are not. And that's why I am upset about that. But that is the breaking news. Vince Briga has made that announcement. I did want to share that. You can go on to Vince Briga, Briga TV, and see his tweet. You can see my response at the MV Consult on Twitter as well. And please make your comment on that. But that was not the focus of the show today. I did want to bring it up, but that was not the focus of the show today. Let me go on to mention, first of all, if you are in the Binghamton Southern Tier area, which is actually rather safe and actually very good area, please drop by my friends at the Belmar Pub and the Park Diner. They have great food. They have great drinks. Those are wonderful locations. That is not a paid advertisement. They are my friends. I enjoy going to those establishments, and I suggest you would do so too. I know many people during the graduation ceremonies at Binghamton University today are also enjoying those establishments. I hope everyone does. I think you'll be very, very happy about that choice. And tell them Mike Voss said, come on down, and let them know that I sent you, or that you're considering it because of that. So with that said, so yes, I'm very upset about what happened at the Union Endicott High School. And there's a lot of stuff that I'm upset about because yesterday was a very disturbing day in the city of Binghamton, the city council meeting that took place. And I'm going to get to that. It's a lot of information. I want to try and get through it all today. But I do want to take a moment to instead tell you about the 200th episode of No Soundbites Allowed. Actually, it's our 240th episode that we've published, but that includes some of the work that we did with the Sunni Broom Republicans, so I'm not going to count that in some of the early episodes we had. But our first official guest on the No Soundbites Allowed podcast was Dr. Giovanni Scaringi. And Dr. Giovanni Scaringi, who is a member of the Binghamton City Council, who is up for re-election in 2019. He's going to be returning with us. He was our first, this was back in, I think, April or May of 2016. He was our first guest, and he is coming on Saturday at 1 p.m. He will be joining us again to be speaking about, well, everything that's happened since he got elected, the many times that we've spoken with him and covered him, and some of the things that are going on in Binghamton itself. And so we're looking forward to having that conversation. We invite you to join us because we will be here over the Memorial Day weekend. It's still a working weekend for us, and we will be here on Saturday, starting at noon, going until 2 p.m., and at 1 p.m. will be our guest, returning back to us, Dr. Giovanni Scaringi, our very first guest. I think it's very appropriate for the 200th episode. That being said, let's get to the meat and potatoes of today. Memorial Day is an important day, and I hope we're all going to enjoy it and remember it. A lot of people confuse it with Veterans Day. It's very similar, but it isn't the same. Now, Memorial Day started roughly, and it's in dispute, but somewhere around 1868. It's not that we haven't ever done this before. Memorial Day is about celebrating and decorating and remembering those that fought in various wars, gave their lives for America in particular, and across the world. And this is a tradition that's been going on for a long time. In 1868, it's estimated, about 1865, we saw that, and this is in dispute, but in Charleston, many of the former black soldiers who fought in the Civil War were burying and remembering, or reburying, many of the soldiers that died in the Civil War conflict in Charleston. And they would go back and remember the sacrifice that was given. And that kind of led to 1868, where it was more formalized. Waterloo, New York is also credited with starting the concept of the Memorial Day, remembering and decorating the graves of our soldiers and those who have made the greatest sacrifice for us to have the freedoms that we have today, to be able to, as I am right now, speak with you openly and freely without fear of retribution from the government, although I still have to deal with the censorship of the internet. But again, a freedom that, unlike many, pretty much anywhere else in the world, is not available. And it's only because of the blood, sweat, and tears of those who have died before us, who have given the ultimate sacrifice. And that sacrifice is not just their blood, but also let's remember those in the military who have suffered from PTSD. My father did. For many years after the Vietnam War, he suffered from PTSD. It led to him losing his arm, half his leg, from having serious issues with alcohol, and many emotional issues. And I know many people have that now. I have many friends who served over in Afghanistan and were fighting and have given their minds and their bodies for America and suffer to this day. And the number of veterans who have died because of suicide, because they can't deal with it. So we need to remember all of that. And we need to give thanks for that. And we need to reach out to our veterans to help them and to give them the support they need, to help them. Some of them are homeless. Let's try and get them to be warmer, to have a shelter, to be able to get help. Let's help our VAs to better be able to take care of the medical issues that our veterans are suffering from because they gave everything for us. Let's try to do more. And this is a great weekend to remember that and to reach out and try to help. I suggest it. I recommend it. I hope you are able to do so. Whether it's a little thing or a big thing, it doesn't matter. It's something. So I did want to mention that. And that's a good thing. But it's not all good news this weekend. And it's not all about the memories that we have aren't all going to be positive memories, because there's some bad news. There's some negative news that's coming out right now. Because we just learned today, just a few hours ago, before the show, and we had to readjust the show a little bit, because we find out that John Walker Lindh is being freed. Now, a lot of people, and this is according to the BBC News, and there's been some other articles by like the BBC News, in giving a more clear answer of what's going on. Because, as they mentioned, Mr. Lindh, who was an American Taliban, literally a traitor to the United States during an active time of warfare, which is an offense that can result in death. He served and fought with the Taliban and Al-Qaeda against America. He actively helped to kill Americans. That is a fact. He was tried. It was true. He admitted it. And he was sentenced to 20 years. This was after 9/11. And he was captured in 9/11, in 2001. And I have a lot of anger with this, I have to tell you, quite honestly. I have a lot of anger about someone who actively has gone out to kill Americans because of a fanatical ideology, and his benefit. He had all the benefits of America, the freedom, the ability to have his religion, to believe what he wanted to believe, and he decided that no one should have those rights, because that's what the beliefs are of the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, the fanatics of their religion, that they believe women should not be able to be taught and have educations, that they can't have the freedom to speak their mind or hold jobs, that men are restricted in what they can do in terms of their freedom and how they speak, how they dress, what they think. This is what he believed. And this is what he was willing to kill for, to kill Americans for. Something that Iran is very much in favor of, that many of these nations are. And so he went and he joined it. And we see in the BBC article that he is being released early. He's being released 3 years early. He spent 17 years of a 20-year sentence for treason and aiding and abetting and killing Americans. Our Mr. Pompeo, who is our Secretary of Defense, he's out there, and he said he was deeply troubling, that this was deeply troubling and wrong. He goes on to say that he believes Mr. Lindh is still threatening the United States of America and is still committed to the very jihad that he engaged in. And this is something that has been confirmed and stated in many, many cases. Okay? So Mr. Lindh, at 16, decided to go to Yemen. He trained and fought for 5 years against America. During his time in prison, he has continued to mention and support the extremism of the Islam. We see that in the BBC article, which you may not see in many of the U.S. articles, that Foreign Policy magazine has documented in 2007 that Mr. Lindh continued to advocate for global jihad and to write and translate violent extremist texts. We see that late last year, Lindh told television news producers that he would continue to spread violent extremist Islam upon his release. And that more recently, the Atlantic magazine, the journalist Graham Wood, wrote letters to Lindh and was speaking with him and describes him as unrepentant. More than 17 years, and I'm quoting his more than 17 years in captivity, seem, on the basis of his correspondence to Graham Wood, to have converted Lindh from an Al-Qaeda supporter to an Islamic State supporter, which means ISIS. So this guy is just as violent and as dangerous today as the day that he was captured in Afghanistan fighting for the Taliban. He is just as much of a danger to the people and the public. And again, that was from the BBC. I want you to be able to see this, and you can look this article up for yourself. The article is John Walker Lindh, Anger as American Taliban Freed. It was from about an hour ago, today, May 23rd, from BBC News. In addition, there's also an article about this that I want to get into. Well, let me address this in a different way. There's a lot of issues with this, and I have a problem because this guy's going to Virginia. And if you happen to be in Virginia, please be aware that you have an individual who's going to be joining your state who is a danger, a outright danger to your state. That this individual is looking forward to the ability to go out and try to contact members of Al-Qaeda and to endanger your life. That he is, even though, and I want to be fair here, because in articles, and I believe it was in the Military Times, and here it is, in the article from the Military Times by Matthew Barakat, through the Associated Press, announced 20 hours ago, and the article is American Taliban, John Walker Lindh to be released from prison after nearly 2 decades. That came out yesterday, May 22nd. They do mention in here that he is going into Virginia, that he is still considered a danger, that the United States government still is going to be looking at him very carefully, that he is going to be restricted in many ways. And I want to get that portion of it. Where is it? Sorry. Well, essentially, I know that in the article, and I don't see it at this moment, but he's being restricted in terms of his access to the internet is going to be reviewed. He can't write in any language other than English. He is not allowed to go on to terrorist or extremist sites, that he is not to promote his extremist points of view. But yet, that doesn't mean that he's going to be safe. And in fact, both a Republican and a Democrat, Republican Senator Richard Shelby and Democrat New Hampshire Senator Maggie Hassan, wrote a letter to the Bureau of Prisons saying, in part, quote, "We must consider the security and safety implications for our citizens and communities who will receive individuals like John Walker Lindh who continue to openly call for extremist violence." There is the problem right there. And this is something from senators, both Republican and Democrat, that are saying you have to be on, the government needs to be aware and watch for this. And more importantly, the people need to be aware and watch out for individuals who have been identified and tried and proven to be guilty of trying to kill Americans. And this is something we must be aware of this weekend, as well as for the rest of our lives, because I personally do not trust Mr. Lindh, who has no remorse and had no appreciation for the freedoms and the love and the greatness of America. And yes, America is great. I disagree with Governor Cuomo on that. America was, is, and will be great. I believe that as long as we adhere to the principles of the Constitution, and those, very importantly, being the First Amendment, the freedom of speech, and the Second Amendment, being able to bear arms to protect ourselves from individuals like John Walker Lindh and others like the Taliban, like Al-Qaeda, like Iran, and other groups that are interested in destroying our nation, democratic socialists, that would destroy our freedoms and destroy our ability to defend ourselves and turn us into Venezuela, where we have the government attacking the people with tanks and running them over and shooting them because they've removed the ability of those citizens to defend themselves. These are very real concerns. And I have them, and I'm sharing them with you. And I hate that we have to have a conversation on Memorial Day weekend, at a time when we're supposed to be celebrating our nation and those who have sacrificed so much for us. We are spending it talking about an individual who has gone out and disrespected those who have died for everything he had, for everything that he has been able to do, for everyone in this nation, that we have to talk about this on this weekend. You know what? That's why this week, and we like to point out the shame of the week, and you know what? That's the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Shame on you. Game of Thrones kind of shame on you. Shame. If you had to release this individual, which I do not believe should have been done, he should have served all 20 years of his 20-year sentence. He's lucky he wasn't shot for treason. But if he had to be released, then why in the world did you have to do it on Memorial Day weekend? If for nothing else, just avoiding that visual, that mental image. You could have picked any other time. You could have gone last week, you can go the week after. You could have picked a different time. The man's been in for 17 years and 5 months. An extra week or two would make no difference. And they're saying that he's being let out on good because he's been a good prisoner. And I have to question, what defines a good prisoner? When someone is continuing to advocate, as the media have reported several times from 2017 until most recently, they are continuing to say that he is a violent and unrepentant terrorist looking to destroy the United States and the people of the United States, then I have to say that is not a model prisoner. It is not someone who deserves to be released early. And quite honestly, I wouldn't release him at all. But that's my personal part of that. But why are we releasing him and then releasing him on Memorial Day weekend? Where is the sense of sensitivity about this whatsoever? Where is the concern from senators that is being respected and addressed and thought about? This is just wrong on every single level, and I am really upset with the Federal Bureau of Prisons, not because they're doing their job fantastic. You couldn't be sensitive enough to realize not to do this during Memorial Day weekend. And I hope the people of Virginia are prepared to have a potential continued terrorist in their communities. And I hope people will be aware and try to protect themselves and to be vigilant about what this individual is going to do, because he's only going to be watched on probation for 3 years. And after the end of that 3 years, which goes by very quickly, this individual is going to then turn around and be able to get onto the internet, both in English and in other languages, and promote the demise of the American people. And that scares me. And that concerns me. Not because I believe in freedom. I believe in freedom of speech. But that is limited by the incitement of violence. You are free to speak. You are not free to incite violence. And when we have an individual who has demonstrated the willingness to not only incite violence, but commit violence against our nation, which is treason, then we have to stand up and say, wait a minute, something is wrong here. We need to do something about this. We need to be aware of this. It's just very aggravating. And I'm going to take a quick break here because there's other things I want to talk about and I want to get to them. But this could take up the entire episode, and I don't want it to because he doesn't deserve that. And I think that it's aggravating. And I don't want to be aggravated as I speak because I enjoy you. I love speaking with you all. So we're going to talk, but I'm going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll have a little bit more of a conversation about a couple of other things, which are kind of related, but not exactly. But we'll talk about it in just a moment.
You tell me you're different. You say you got some things and you're working on it. Oh, but I never listen. No, was too busy thinking you're the perfect one. It's such a mystery, cause usually I'm looking for a reason to stay. But who would have believed that here I be and I just can't look away. Oh, you tried to give me a warning. Say watch your step before you fall too hard. You tell me I'm crazy, I say not crazy enough. But I'm crazy for you, crazy, crazy about us. And I know that it's true, baby, it may be too much. But I'm crazy for you, crazy, crazy in love. Can't even thinking you're alone and how you feel. I wanna show you the difference. If you let me, I could show you something real. It's such a mystery, cause usually I'm looking for a reason to stay. Oh, yeah. But who would have believed that here I be and I just can't look away. Oh, you tried to give me a warning. Say watch your step before you fall too hard. You tell me I'm crazy, I say not crazy enough. But I'm crazy for you, crazy, crazy about us. And I know that it's true, baby, it may be too much. But I'm crazy for you, crazy, crazy in love. Never giving up, never giving up, never giving up, never giving up on you. Never giving up, never giving up, never giving up, never giving up on you. Never giving up, never giving up, never giving up, never giving up on you. Never giving up, I'm crazy for you. Never giving up on you. You tried to give me a warning. Say watch your step before you fall too hard. You tell me I'm crazy, I say not crazy enough. But I'm crazy for you, crazy, crazy about us. And I know that it's true, baby, it may be too much. But I'm crazy for you, crazy, crazy in love. never giving up on you. Never giving up, never giving up, never giving up, never giving up on you. Never giving up, never giving up, never giving up, never giving up on you.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us again back at the No Soundbites Allowed podcast. I hope you are enjoying the show, and we are on the Exceptional Conservative Network. That's right, that is TECN TV, and we do hope that you do get a chance to check out some of our other artists, other individuals on the network, including Ken McClinton, Dr. Jane Ruby, and so many others, doing great jobs trying to bring you news and different views that you don't see on the mainstream media, talking about it in a way that you don't hear on the mainstream media, because we're not restricted by some news editor or some corporate entity saying, well, you can't talk about that or you can't express that opinion. We don't believe that. I mean, we believe in the First Amendment and being able to share our thoughts with you and also to hear from you. And you can reach here for No Soundbites Allowed. You can reach us at MV Consult on Twitter. You can reach us on Facebook at the Voss Political Commentary. Right now, we won't be able to answer emails if you reach out to us. That's only because our email is down. Please, if you get a chance, donate, whether it's $1, whether it's $5 or $50. It does make a difference. It does help us out. You can go to our GoFundMe and donate if you enjoy the program, so we can get our email back on and keep the lights on for the program, because that is important and you make a difference. I also want to very quickly mention as well, my friends, this is not a paid advertisement, but my friends down at the Belmar Pub and at the Park Diner. I know many people are in town in Binghamton and Southern Tier this weekend because of the Binghamton University and the SUNY Broome College graduations. Please drop by the Belmar Pub and the Park Diner. Great food, great atmosphere, really good places. And as I said, they are my friends. I go there personally. I enjoy them. So I advise, if you're here, check them out. And also do check out our 200th episode. Don't put it on your schedule. Saturday during the holiday. Wrong thing. Please come on over and see us on our 200th episode, Saturday, starting at noon. We will have at 1 o'clock our special guest, Dr. Giovanni Scaringi. He is a councilman for the city of Binghamton, and he was our first elected official and actually first interview on the program when we had just started it up. And he's back again for our 200th episode to celebrate that with us. We look forward to it. I hope you're going to be there with us. So I was very upset in the last half here, especially talking about John Lindh. He aggravates me. The concept of an individual who would kill other Americans because he wants to deny them their freedoms aggravates me beyond belief. But I don't want to focus on that for the entire show. That's not what we're looking to do. And I am passionate about it. I do have very strong feelings about it, but we want to talk about other things. So let's get into that. And part of what I want to talk about is, in addition, what we're seeing, there was a news report that just came out. Gallup poll came out with on the 20th, May 20th. You may not have heard about this, but they came out and they did a poll showing that 4 in 10 Americans embrace some form of socialism. And that was on May 20th that they came out, and that's from Gallup. And it's amazing that 43% of Americans say socialism would be a good thing for our country. That is scary. 51% believe socialism would be a bad thing for the country. That is good news. But I think it's really interesting. And in the poll, they look at what happened, a comparison of 1942 and 2019. And the number of people in 1942 who thought that socialism was good for the country, 25%. In 2019, 43%. You know what the big difference in that number is? In 1942, when 25% of the nation thought that socialism was a good thing, you did not have, you just barely had a few years of the Soviet Union existing. We did not have Cuba. We did not have North Korea. We did not have a communist China in the way we do now. We did not have Venezuela completely failing. In fact, we did not have the experience of decades of examples where every single socialist communist nation in the world has failed. And every single time the new one crops up, they always say, no, you don't understand. We can do the socialist thing better. The other guys just made a mistake. And it has completely failed. In particular, in the Soviet Union, with over 75 years of example down the line, it completely fails. And yet, today, in 2019, more people think that socialism is a good thing. Almost double the number of people think socialism is a good thing, even though we have history and example after example currently going on in the world. Starvation in Venezuela, the government destroying, killing people, the problems in North Korea, the problems in the Soviet Union, or the former Soviet Union, the new Union of States, and China. We have the examples everywhere in the world, and yet people are saying, no, socialism is great. Democratic socialism, it's the new thing. We can do it better this time. And yet it has never been done better because it always relies on the same principles of denying people freedom, imposing government rule, and destroying lives. But, Gallup does have this, and I think it's very important, especially if we look at it from the viewpoint in memory. We're looking at Memorial Day, looking back on the world and looking at how we've saved the world from this autocratic viewpoint in World War II and since with the Cold War. And we've made the world better because the world is more free overall. And we've been able to give more advances because notice, we're coming up with the advances. You're not seeing that coming out of the communist nations. They don't advance. They don't innovate. No, we see that in capitalist societies because there is a reason to innovate and motivate. And having personally lived in the Soviet Union, in Moscow, in 1991, and seeing what socialism is firsthand, oh my God, I don't wish that on my enemies. It is horrible. It is horrendous. But let's look at what the poll went on to say. Again, from Gallup, they go on to look at American views on future of democracy and socialism globally. In 1949, there was an outlook for democracy, 72%, the growth of democratic governments versus communist or socialist governments in the world. And the democratic view, 72% of Americans were seeing the world having the potential to be more democratic. Today, it's 57%. Socialism, the socialist viewpoint, like the democratic socialists that we hear from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders, 14% in 1949 believed that was the movement where most nations in the world will be going. Today, 29% believe that. It doubled. And what about communist? Well, that still has a stigma to it, but quite honestly, there is no difference between socialism and communism. If you have actually studied it, if you've actually looked at it, if you looked at the nations, the fact is that socialism is the stepping stone to get you to communism. And it is part of the doctrine that they need nations to become socialist so that they can have a communist world. They go hand in hand. They are the same thing. The only difference is socialism is more isolated to this nation, as communism hopes to infect the world. But you can have a communist state as well. But there really is no difference other than the wording. And we've seen that communism has a very negative connotation, whereas socialism doesn't. And if you notice, no nation calls itself a communist. They call themselves socialist. North Korea is the People's Republic, the Socialist People's Republic. China is a People's Republic, a Socialist People's Republic. The former Soviet Union, the USSR, that's the Soviet Socialist Republic. That's not. No one goes and says, well, we're the communists. They say they're the socialists because that's what socialism is. That is the communism that we talk about, and that is the downfall of nation after nation. In fact, socialism and communism are responsible for more deaths in the world in the 20th century than any other cause combined. in terms of war, in terms of nuclear bombs, in terms of, you put it all together, more people have died at the hands of socialist and communist governments than every other form of government and every other war that's out there. And yet we're seeing more Americans say that that's a great idea. And you know who's happy to hear that? You know who's looking forward to that? Iran. Iran is happy about that. Because as we see in the news, reported on the 22nd, yesterday, May 22nd, by Reuters, Iran youth, the article's title is Iran Youth Will Witness the Demise of Israel, American Civilization. This comes from the Ayatollah of Iran. So here's a problem. Here's a big, big problem. Iran wants to kill America. Iran, who believe, along with Mr. Lindh, John Lindh, and the Taliban and the Al-Qaeda and ISIS, believe that Americans having freedom is evil, and therefore you need to be killed. Notice I didn't say that Republicans or conservatives are evil, not libertarians are evil. No. They said Americans. So that means progressives. That means liberals. That means Democrats. They want to kill us all. They don't see a separation. They don't see a division. They don't agree with the political differences. They see us all as Americans, period. Stop. And that we all deserve the same death penalty. That is what they believe. That doesn't come from a political ideology. And just because you may be a kind-hearted liberal progressive and think that, there should be a hierarchy of the micro categories and that people who happen to be transgender are more important than people who happen to be white or male or straight or some combination of those things. No, they don't care about that. They would kill. Iran actively and repeatedly and consistently kills transgenders, gays, and people that they don't agree with, whether you happen to be male or female, especially women. They believe in raping them, killing them. This is what their government does. They don't care whether you think that it's PC, politically correct, to say certain things, and that some people need to be addressed as Zur, because they don't care. They'll kill you. They don't want to address you as Zur. They want to kill you. And that's because you're an American. And that's because you have freedom of thought, freedom of religion. And they don't care whether you believe or not believe and whether someone should be called a certain surname. They think that you should all be dead. So that's important, because I think a lot of people don't hear that enough and think, well, no, but I'm a progressive, so they would like me. They're upset with the conservatives. No, they're upset with you being an American, period. Stop. They want to kill you because you're an American. And in the article, which it goes on to say, the Khomeini, the Ayatollah of Iran, goes to say, and I quote, "You young people should be assured that you will witness the demise of the enemies of humanity, meaning the degenerate American civilization and the demise of Israel." I mean, he's saying it right there. He's talking to students, the youth, the next generation of Iran. And he is imparting on them an ideology that says that the degenerate American civilization. That means if you are living in America, if you are an American, he wants you dead. He wants to see you dead. It doesn't matter if you're a progressive, if you're a liberal, if you're in the far left, along with progressive leaders of tomorrow, if you're a member of Black Lives Matter, BLM, if you're a member of Citizen Action, he wants you dead because you are a degenerate American, period. Let's get this reality in our heads that that's what we're dealing with. These aren't nice people. It's not a question of whether Trump is in office or not. They want Americans dead. It could be anyone. You could have Jimmy Carter. You can have President Obama. It doesn't matter. They want you dead. And speaking about President Obama, what did he have to say about the nuclear deal under President Obama? Let's take a look. Well, he says, the way the new... here it is. Excuse me. the way the nuclear deal was put in action, I didn't have much faith in it. Khomeini, who is the highest authority in Iran, said, and we repeatedly told the president, that would be Obama, and the foreign minister, and gave them notice that they did not believe in this, that they have no faith in the Iran deal. Because back in the day, if you were paying attention, and I was, during the entire Iran nuclear deal, they were saying consistently, the highest authority in Iran, the Ayatollah, was saying, let's kill Americans. At the same time that the nuclear deal was promising, or coming from American side, President Obama and John Kerry were promising that, the world would be less in danger, that Iran would be more safe. As they said, at the same time, Iran said, no, we're going to continue to move forward. We want to kill Americans. You can't say that you're making things better when they're saying, we will kill you. And let's think about this for a second, because as I wrote in my article, and this is at the Voss Political Commentary, and I wrote this on July of 2016, how safe is the world after Iran nuclear deal? And in that article, we noticed that John Kerry, on January 21st of 2016, in an interview with CNBC, can't say it's some kind of hyper right, CNBC, it's about as left as you get. And they said, he said to them, John Kerry, I think that some of it will end up in the hands of the IRGC or other entities, some of which are labeled terrorists. Now, let's be very clear. Secretary John Kerry, then Secretary John Kerry, in 2016, was talking about the money that was given to Iran as part of the Iran nuclear deal and the release of sanctions. The IRGC is the Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps, and they are a terrorist organization. He's talking about the United States in the nuclear Iran deal, the Iranian nuclear deal, went and released the money, allowing Iran to support basically terrorism around the world. And that's terrifying to me. It's terrifying to me that we have people who believe, well, the best thing we could have done was under Obama. We gave them money, we reduced the sanctions. They promised that they would not kill us. And yet they have turned around and they have said it consistently, then and now. And it may not have been well reported, but John Kerry, President Obama, admitted they understood that this was about terrorism growing in the world, that their actions actually promoted more terrorism than it helped to defeat. That is terrifying. And we should all be scared of that. We really, really should. And when I think about this, it just makes me very, very upset. And that's why people like Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, I'm bringing her up because it's the 2020 elections are coming around the corner, and we're seeing her go out there and she supports the Iran nuclear deal, as do all of as far as I'm aware, every single Democratic nominee for the 2020 presidency all support the Iran nuclear deal. The deal that Iran says doesn't matter. They want to kill the degenerate American civilization. That's what the Ayatollah says. That's what the Iranian government says. That is what the purpose of the Iranian Guard, Republican Guard, are looking to do. Create terrorism, create more people like John Lindh to try and kill Americans. And this is all coming out during Memorial Day weekend. It's very troubling. It's very troubling. I have to tell you, folks, there was a lot more I wanted to go into. I wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on with Anthony Brindisi, because he's been on a victory tour talking about Bill H.R. 2333, where he's very happy because the bill got passed, and he's saying it's some kind of success story, and it really isn't. It really isn't even close. No Democrats, not a single Democrat from New York State has supported this bill. Okay, you don't have to believe me. You can go over to GovTrack, look up the bill, HR 2333. You'll see the support is actually 10 members, not even 10% of, not even 1% of the number of people who are in Congress support this bill. Did it get passed? Absolutely, because they did a voice vote. No one was willing to say that this bill is incomplete, that it doesn't really do anything. He only had 3 members of the House Veterans Affairs actually support the bill. 10 members altogether. Almost all of them were Democrats, 6 out of 4. None of them from New York State support what he's been doing. Max Rose, Kathleen Rice, who are both members of the Veteran Affairs Committee from New York. Max Rose is the New York 11th, and Kathleen Rice is from the New York 4, and they completely ignored this. They don't care about this bill because all it does, if you're wondering, HR 2333, Support for Suicide Prevention Coordinators Act, all it does is get a report and says, here is the problem with the effort to reduce veteran suicides. That's all it does. You don't have to believe me. You can go, you can check the bill out. You'll be able to look at the text yourself. Please, I'll include the link down here. It doesn't actually fix anything. It's very short. It's not even a page. And all it does is get a report in a year that says this is what the problem is. And what it doesn't do is, how do you fix it? What do you do next? What are we doing to help reduce veteran suicides? It doesn't do anything. It is useless because it doesn't have an action. All it says is, well, let's find out how bad the problem is. Let's just, and I think that's part of the process. And I do support, let's find out what's the problem. Where are we failing? But it does nothing to say, and then let's do something about that. And that's a failure. And that's why it doesn't have any real support, because it's useless. You don't need a law in Congress to say, let's make a report. Or you shouldn't. Let's make a report. Okay, make the report. But what we need is a law that says, and this is how we fix the problem. Again, it goes back to, like I was talking earlier about gun control. It's about, let's fix the root problem. You're not addressing the problem. You're not looking at the root cause. What is the root problem? Let's fix that. Everything else is not really important, quite honestly. Really isn't. But there was more I wanted to talk about. That I wanted to talk about local politics and the city council race, city council meeting as well. I can't do that because we're out of time. An hour goes by very fast, especially when I get upset with breaking news, as we've talked about earlier today. But I hope you did enjoy the show. I hope you did enjoy the time here with me on No Soundbites Allowed, here on the Exceptional Conservative Network, TECN TV. I hope you will join us on Saturday. That's right, Saturday at 12 noon we start. And we will have Dr. Giovanni Scaringi as our special guest for our 200th episode at 1 p.m. I look forward to seeing you there with us. And I hope until then, you're going to have a great Memorial Day. I hope all of our veterans will be well and that you're going to be supported and loved because you deserve it. And I hope everyone is able to see us on Saturday. So I got to go. I'll talk to you guys very soon. Thank you.